Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 323. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, Dr. Norge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You-Know.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we talk about Earth 2-0, World's Finest 0, Green Lantern Corps 0, Nightwing number 0, and Batman and Robin 0. And it's funny, a lot of our discussion is generated by listener voicemails. And we're going to, over the next few episodes, we're going to be doing a lot more with listener voicemails because we've had a bunch of them come in, and they've all been really, really great. So thank you for everyone who's been participating. If we didn't get your voicemail on this episode, they will be coming. So thanks a lot. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. Sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, we're at the end of September, and actually, depending on when you listen to this episode, it's going to be right at the beginning of October. This is the time to start looking at DCBService.com to see what kind of deals they're going to be offering in October. I want to remind everyone that DCB Service is a Comixology digital partner. Every time you do a digital purchase at DCBService.com, you got to go to their website and do it. You pay the same amount that you would normally pay for digital books, but you earn 5% of your purchases towards DCB Service credit that you can use for future orders. So make sure to link your account to DCBService.com and make sure you make that deal. And it's a great way to help our show sponsor, but also to help yourself by getting free stuff, which is really cool. So I want to thank DCBService.com for continuing to support the show. Over at InStockTrades.com. These Absolute Editions, we've talked about them on the show before. I haven't had a chance to shout them out in a while. They released the Absolute Green Lantern Sinestro War hardcover. This collects Green Lantern 21 to 25, Green Lantern Corps 14 to 19, Green Lantern Sinestro Corps Special number 1, and it's a 368-page volume. This is a $99 book. At InStockTrades.com right now, it's 50% off, only $49.99. For anybody that buys hardcovers and trade paperbacks, if you look at a $49.99 amount, that's what you'd normally pay for a couple hardcovers. Now you're getting these huge slipcase Absolute Editions for that price when you find these deals. And here's the great part about that. Orders of $50 or more give you free shipping. So if you grab that and another trade, you got free shipping on that as well. So head on over to InStockTrades.com and save yourself some money on the Absolute Edition. For anyone who hasn't a chance to read that I think is one of the pivotal volumes of Green Lantern. That's really set off this vibe of there being different corps, and the big war between Sinestro's corps and the Green Lanterns it was really a terrific read. And if you haven't had a chance to read it, it's a great opportunity to grab it that way and read it in that oversized volume. But also for longtime fans, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. I'm glad they're collecting more of these arcs from Green Lantern in Absolute Editions, because I think it's a character whose crossovers and stories kind of lend themselves to being collected in that type of treatment. So once again, InStockTrades.com. Oh, James, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show. This weekend, I want to remind everyone I'm heading to Mid-Ohio-Con. So it's the Wizard Mid-Ohio-Con. And it's Wizard OhioCon, I think they call it now. Wizard World. It's one of the Wizard conventions. And it's going to be out in Columbus. So if anybody's going to be out there, I will be at various times roaming around the show floor to those conventions. It's convention season. So hopefully I'll see everyone there. And let's talk some comics.
Can Batman escape? One hint. The worst is yet to come.
Jim, before we start talking about World's Finest, the first book that I want to talk about, I want to do a spoiler-free shout-out. I know you haven't had a chance to read this yet, the Teen Titans number 0. This is the issue that did Tim Drake's origin. And, dude, I think any Tim Drake fan is going to be pretty happy with this.
Cool.
Because it makes sense. The whole, Tim is Red Robin thing. That's the controversy that's been going around. I'm not going to spoil anything. That's the controversy going around that, Tim went straight to being Red Robin. It's not that simple, and it works out really well, and it feels great with the flow, and when you see there's a lot of Bruce in it, there's a lot of Tim in it, there's a lot of it that it feels just like what Tim Drake's origin should be, more compressed, like what's going on with what we've seen with Dick Grayson and with Jason Todd in some of the other Zero issues. So I just wanted to do a general shot. I know you haven't read it yet, but I read that last night. It was the first one that I grabbed to read, just because with everything surrounding it, like you wanted to know, okay, what's all the hubbub? I thought it was a terrific issue. The art was spectacular, just a great issue, and I can't wait. We'll get a chance to talk about it after you've had a chance to read it. But I thought it was really, really a terrific origin that stayed very true to who Tim is. I'd love to hear people's thoughts. So feel free to call into the show and send us your thoughts on that one, because I'd love to hear what people are thinking about this. I know there's a lot of, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are torn on it because of obvious changes and things, but that's been par for the course with the New 52, because there's been changes to some characters that are beloved. But I thought this really stayed true to who Tim was, and I thought it wound up being a great story, and I'd love to hear other people's reactions. And I think it'd be great to have those when you and I have a discussion about it. So, kind of cool. Just wanted to give it a general shout-out. Huntress and Power Girl in World's Finest #0. I wanted to see this because, we had the alluding to, and for me it was, who's Huntress's mom?
Yeah.
And I wanted to see what that relationship was like, and what the relationship was like with her dad. And really how dark their whole world turned for them very, very quickly. Because, we had a Bruce who got married to Selena Kyle, and they had this daughter together, and she was training with Bruce. And then this horrible thing happens where, because of Apocalypse and Darkseid, Mom ends up being taken out. But the story's not quite that simple. And it's one of the things that I really am loving about this Earth 2 world that's been crafted, is seeing what's worked in the past with Earth 2 concepts and them adding a little twist and a turn in it that makes it a little bit fresh, a little bit different, while keeping at its core. I thought was really neat about Earth 2. I would love to see more books set in the Earth 2 world, because I just think there's a lot of characters moving forward that there's an option to explore that even you're not going to even get in the main Earth 2 book. I think this series just really kind of showcases and highlights that. But what was your thinking about World's Finest #0? How did you like this issue? What were some things that stood out for you?
Oh, this was definitely what I was hoping for, and this was a really cool story for me. Now, Levitz invented Huntress, correct?
Yes.
And his version was the Earth 2 Huntress, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah. So and it was funny because when I was reading this, I was like, man, this just because I didn't know the past. So this is my exposure to Earth 2 Huntress, daughter of Batman and Catwoman. So I was like, this has got to be what it was like in the last run. The last time they told this version of the origin. So I was kind of very excited at the fact that it felt right. It felt like who she should be. I was like, this makes sense. When you were talking just minutes ago about Tim, it makes sense. This right here made perfect sense to me, and that was something I really enjoyed about it, because it was not only was it what I would expect from, the daughter raised by Batman, the daughter of Batman and Catwoman. Boom, this is who she is. She's had a lifetime of training, of discipline. There was family elements. There was little humor moments. There was some great mom and dad moments between Batman and Catwoman. And I just loved seeing that kind of interaction. It was one of those things where I was like, man, I would love to see an ongoing story of these three, or a limited series that just shows the early years before Earth Zero, before the Zero Act hour happens. Actually show us what it was like growing up in the house. Those two together. What happened between this Bruce and Selena? How did they meet? How did they, become, more than just, adversaries? Where was the connection? Where was the spark? I just, every time I read these stories of Earth 2, read something from that era, I want to know more about these characters. And it's something that it's an excitement, it's an energy, and that brings it forward to the current stuff, knowing more about them. This was just a great issue, and I want to say fun issue, but yeah, I'm always leery of saying fun because I don't want people thinking, hey, it's just some throwaway. It wasn't a throwaway. This was a great character story building story, but I enjoyed it. I had fun reading this. I read this multiple times just for the heck of it, just to enjoy it. This was definitely a really appreciated. Again, another solid 0 issue hit for me.
Let's take back that word fun. I'm honestly echoing everything you're saying, and I love how you're saying that. You know, it's I don't want to take away from it with fun. No, I think that word we need to take back, because to me, I read comics for fun. I want that kind of enjoyment. A good story should make me smile, should make me be entertained, even if it's a dark story. You know, I mean, there should be some part of me in there that's going, "Wow, I really got something out of that experience," and I got that with this. And I'm with you. When I said I would like to see more, another series or something, I'm with you. It could be miniseries, whatever, more set in Earth 2. There's a lot of stories to be told from the past. There's a lot of stories to be told in the present. And I love, whether they do it or not, I love that I want more. I think that's a real key component. When you're enjoying something, you should feel like you want more. You're excited for more. You want to know more depth to it. And this is one of those series that really hits the home run with that. I also really like these bits where Selina's confronting Bruce over the fact that he is going after these, cosmic threats, these big threats, because he's part of the Trinity. And they're going after these big, huge issues like a dark side and an apocalypse and the Steppenwolf, the real threats, Steppenwolf, coming to their world. But she's saying, hey, what about our reality here? What about our home life? There comes a point where, yeah, the job's all well and fine and all, and what you're doing's great, but that's to me who Selina is. Selina's that street level person. As the cat burglar, she was that person. In her solo series in the East End, she was that kind of person. She's dealing with the events that are really at your core, the day-to-day stuff that people sometimes turn their head away from. And she's one of those characters I've really enjoyed the gray area with her. Is she a hero? Is she a villain? Is she something in between? And I think that's always how she should feel. Seeing her with her daughter there and really calling Bruce to task, are you nuts having her out there on the street? Because you're not here, we're going to be training your daughter to take your place. Think about who you are and what your training is. How do we put her out there? It would be different having your kid in that position. And I really enjoyed the commentary there. But I also love that this is a couple that clearly, the two of them probably, I'm guessing just from the way the story is being told, what we know from the history of Batman and Catwoman, they fought for years getting together on both sides. Selina would have dark things happen to her. She'd push away Bruce. Bruce had his own issues where, his mission got in the way of having any kind of ongoing romance. I want to know what eventually made these two agree that they could move forward together as a couple. And it was stuff that I really enjoyed, like when that was explored in Hush, where we got a chance to see the two of them become a couple. And it was heart-wrenching almost for me at the end of that series where they wound up not being together. And that was something here. I'm glad to see them go to this point. This was something I've always loved about Earth 2, seeing these characters move forward, seeing Clark move forward and marry Lois Lane, seeing Bruce get married to Selina. Of course, in this world, it doesn't end so nice.
Yeah, for both of them, it just didn't go well.
But seeing the daughter, when the two of them are kissing, saying, hey, how about the keeping in mind that the rest of us don't need to see this? That stuff's great. I eat that up because it has a real world feel to it. And it has this sense that you talk about on the show many, many times about how you like progression. To me, Earth 2 was always about the progression that you couldn't get in the current continuity comics because you want to keep the characters young and fresh and accessible to newer readers. To me, Earth 2 was always that answer for those old readers that wanted to feel like their friends were having a life beyond what we'd seen with. That was the continuity. The idea behind Earth 2 was it was the continuity that had been replaced. And I loved that concept all the time. So I do feel like this was a glimpse into that world. A dark glimpse, but it was a glimpse.
Yeah, you had these great moments where, I love the scene with Selina and, with Huntress and Catwoman when they're on the streets, when they're throwing down and they're doing their thing. I love just that at the after fact, that afterwards, just the mother and daughter, just like, good job, kitten, and just that hug. And there's that wonderful, friendly, just, family moment. Then you get into the flow into the Bruce and Selina argument where they're going back and forth, and that ends in this wonderful moment. Then on to Clark and Kara, just that whole interaction where he's just pushing her. It has to be a perfect shot. We have to keep you hidden from them. I don't want another Lois. And you have all this bright, friendly happiness, and the end of it is just not like Lois. And of course, immediately my head goes, okay, what happened to Lois, man? Hold on. And even on the Superman side, you have these moments, and then boom, they bring it down. But it's not like taking away from your enjoyment, taking away from the light, taking away from the energy. It's just that undertone that there's something darker going on here. There is some foreshadowing of the pain to come, which we already see that pain. We've already seen that pain in earlier issues of Earth 2, but you get to see this stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, one of the things that I really liked about the Clark moments was this idea of him pushing her, and pushing her because he doesn't want to see anything befall her that happened to Lois. And that added a sense of, wow, Superman has really been affected by this. He is a lot, I don't want to say colder than before, because that may be going a little too far with it. Probably a lot more directed, a lot more rigid, a lot more disciplined, maybe, than Superman. Not that Superman's aloof, but it really is like he's stricter. Stricter is probably a better word for it, because he can't allow anything he's saying to her when he says mistakes. He's referring to himself. Obviously, he feels like what happened to Lois was his fault, his mistake for not having taken into account a way to keep her safe when he was away. He didn't hear her scream until it was too late. Those type of things are all like, he's looking at that as, I should have had a way to have heard that. I should have had a way for her to have contacted me in that case. So he has constantly played through in his mind that scenario with Lois and tried to find areas where he could have stopped it. What should he have done differently? And that's what he's doing with her. It's transference. And that to me is very real. I think we all do that. It's a lot of time. Denial does it, or sometimes it's our way of saying, well, I'm going to learn something from this. I'm going to make a good out of this. And you can't in those situations make a good out of it. But I loved how this played out because it felt very real. It's moments like that I love Superman. Because to me, that is a very true testament to who Superman is. When Superman feels human, when he has those moments where, because of events, he was raised on Earth. He had parents on Earth. He has the same emotional strengths and weaknesses that we all have. And I love Superman on the pedestal. I love the dun dun dun. I know you do it all the time too. But I know, like me, you also like Clark. And these are moments where I think we see Clark in those moments. I love the costume, the Earth 2 Superman suit, and no matter which artist has been drawing him, I just really, there's something about that suit that I really like. I like that it's not the current continuity suit. That suit has grown on me immensely. I really like the new, it's funny, the suit of armor that I didn't like before, I really dig now. So that isn't a testament on I liking one more than the other, but I like that this has more of a classic feel. It also shows that this Earth, this Superman, had a very different path. Obviously, a much more traditional path to what we know of Superman. At least that's my take on it. I don't know if you feel that same way.
Well, it's funny when I see those sequences with him and Kara. It was a multiple read-throughs that I started noticing stuff. And it was something that really hit home because you got that initial thing, not like Lois. And you go into the next panel and you start seeing that he's operating out of his version of the Fortress of Solitude. He's no longer, to me, I think he's kind of given up the Clark Kent persona because of what happened to Lois. And I think he's doing Superman full time. But you see in the Fortress, there's that reenactment, recreating of the desk that Lois had in the Daily Planet, including a purse that just draped over the chair. Now,
Jim,
I don't know if
Jim, I don't think that's a reenactment. I think that's the actual wall, the actual desk, and the actual chair from the Daily Planet.
Could definitely easily be his pulling it over. And that was another, I was thinking it could be the same. It could be reenactment. Who knows what it could be. But the one thing I didn't notice until like my third read through, when he's telling her wherever he comes from, he can hurt us.
The scars.
The scars. Yeah, exactly. I didn't notice that the first couple times through. And I was like, wait a minute. oh my God, those are scars. Oh, cool. It was just little extra stuff throughout this sequencing where you see Clark distancing himself. You see him being only Superman. It reminded me of, Kingdom Come Superman, where after Lois died, he distanced himself from the world. And I see this Superman doing that.
Now, it's funny when you see later Huntress training and how much she's being pushed by her father. It's really clear that Bruce is going through similar turmoil to what Clark is. Being well aware that what happened to Lois, I'm sure what happened to Lois is affecting Bruce. And Bruce is looking at this is a dark world, what we're going on with. It's clear that with Selina's comments that the Trinity is heavily involved in trying to shut down what's going on with Apocalypse, and it's been affecting them. This is really such a great companion issue to what's going on in the events in Earth 2, number 0. Because I think if you put the two of them together, you see that besides Apocalypse, there's a lot more going on in this world. It's a very richly developed history to this world. And I so 110% am with you. I want to see all the things that are alluded to that we don't get to see in this book. And whether or not we actually get them, that's what a good story should do. I would love to read a who's who of Earth 2, see the history and what was it like at the Daily Planet when these characters were working? What was the event that happened with Lois, but how did Clark and Lois finally get together? Did they get married? What did that look like between the two of them? How did it differ from the current continuity that we're seeing with Clark and Lois on our world? And those are things that, to me, in a great story, you get those elements where you just want to know the history and the backstory of what's going on between them. The assumptions that I have on this world, I know are one thing, but we already know from Diana's origin that the gods are different for her. So I would imagine for Batman and Superman, there are little tiny elements in their past that would be different and unique to this world, similar to what's going on with Wonder Woman. And that stuff I get geeky with. I want to know that. That's the cool part to me of doing alternate universes. It's not just what's the same, but what is that little twist that's a little different that changes things just a bit? What causes their suit to be a little bit different? What's the origin of that suit? And those are things that I really enjoy. Batman's suit in particular, I really dig from Earth 2 because it is. I feel it's drastically different than what we've seen from Batman on the alternate Earths. And I think it's like a hybrid of various different versions of the Batman suit, and I really like that.
Well, especially in the sequences when you see him fighting parademons and you see him dealing with the supernatural stuff, this version of Batman, just like our version, has multiple variations on the costume depending on the circumstance. I'm going to need a little bit more heavy armored for this one. I'm going to need a little bit more anti-energy weapon. I'm going to need more mobility here. I'm going to need a stealth suit, underwater suit, space suit, etc. And you can easily feel that and see that from this guy. And it's, even when, he eventually does even call out for help. I love the fact that, she knew that, the alarm's never gone off in my life. My dad doesn't need it. My mom wouldn't ask for help. She knew something was severe. She knew something was serious going on. And just the look, the art scene, it broke my heart. You just seeing the pain in her face. You see just the, oh my God, just that look in her. I was just like, whoa, this was, these 2-page spread. You're just sitting there staring and you see, the dead body, Selina's dead body there. And you're just like, oh man. And once again, another member of the Wayne family she didn't watch her mom die, but she's right there when the mom dies. And you're just like, oh God. And then she's right there when the dad dies, because we see that in issue 1. So it's, again, like father, like daughter, the similarities and differences that we're getting from this world really just, it's an accentuation to what I'm enjoying on this.
One of the things I really liked, we get to see the first meeting between Supergirl and the Huntress.
Yeah.
Or Robin. I should say Supergirl and Robin on this. I immediately refer to her as Huntress, but Power Girl and Huntress, if you want to go that right with it. I really like that Superman kept Supergirl so hidden that Robin wouldn't know about her. That because of what's been going on, Superman really kept her under the radar, figuring that if Apocalypse knew, they would go after her, first of all, as a major threat, but also as a way to get to Superman. And Superman was trying to stay one step ahead of them and saying the only thing you can respond to is if Batman calls an emergency, protecting those closest to him. And that's a very Superman thing to do, saying, hey, I've got to keep you safe and all that, but if this happens, it's okay to come under the... And I like that Supergirl takes it seriously. Says, I'm here to rescue you because this is the one thing he said I can do, but you can't tell anyone it was me. And these two build this friendship through common loss, through common being protected. The relationship between Batman and his daughter and Superman and Supergirl are very similar. So these are two that have similar backgrounds due to the events that are going on around them, and they really understand each other. They also have similar senses of self-doubt and the need to prove that they are more than what their respective mentors, family members think they are, that they are capable of handling these things. And that's something I think is great too. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I like the fact she said that Batman's one of two things I'm allowed to respond to. They never say what the second thing is. They've done that a couple times in both the Earth 2.0 issue and this Zero issue, where they throw it out there. What?
Wonder Woman.
Yeah, okay, probably. Yeah.
Because it's only the Trinity. Okay, so I took it, and I might be wrong on that. I just took it immediately. If there's a signal, it's Batman's signal is one of two things I'm allowed to respond to. I would guess Wonder Woman would be the other one.
See, yeah, actually, probably. I was trying to figure out what that could be, and because again, I didn't know, but Wonder Woman makes the most sense.
Because I would think that those are the two people that Superman is the most worried about, them having going through the same thing that he went through with Lois.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or being similar targets.
Now, one of the things that I thought was really cool, and you kind of already commented on it, but I wanted to accentuate on just these two. It's not the first team up, but it's just an immediate connection. You see that when she's fighting and she's outgunned and outmatched. Like, what's she doing? She shouldn't go up against these guys. But there's kind of a little respect to her that she's not backing down. She's not running. She's not hiding. She's going to go down. She's going down swinging. And you can kind of get that feeling of a mutual respect, a mutual understanding. And even afterwards, she does the save. It's not like, let me push you off here to the side and finish up. No, let's finish this together. And the two of them go back in and deal with the problems together. And I really liked and appreciated that because you see just how close of friends they become. You see them later on that this is the foundation of a solid friendship. It was a rescue, but it was more of a team up. It was, those two working together to take down the bad guys that killed her mom, that, beat the, holy crud out of Batman. This wasn't about, let me show you how powerful I am. Let's show how powerful we are together. And that's just been an overwhelming theme in World's Finest in this book. And it's great to see that their first introduction, their first time teaming up together, you had that same feeling to it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I think people can have that. Because I think both of them were longing for that person that understands. And I think when they saw each other, they connected with that right away. Like, hey, especially when they started talking, I get you. You're probably one of the only people on this planet that can understand me. Because it isn't a world that has this Justice League or Justice Society that we're so used to with these characters. There's not these other heroes that are sidekicks that they could talk to and relate to. There's not a Teen Titans, so to speak, that they can go and hang out with on the weekends. This is their first meeting with someone who actually gets it. And the dual identities and having to hide and be underground. And I don't know, that was something that I really, really liked. Now, let's talk about Earth 2. We might as well just jump right into that one because there's just a natural transition here between those two books. Terry Sloan.
Yeah.
It's Mr. Terrific in our previous continuity. The original Mr. Terrific was Terry Sloan. In this world, Terry Sloan has a dark side. He's almost like, to me, a lot like the Luthor that I really like. The Luthor where he believes that the dark things that he does are justified for the betterment and the safety of the world. It's okay to cross these lines. And he's okay with being branded the villain because he feels being branded the villain is fine if that's what's necessary. He'll sacrifice himself to do that because he feels he knows just a little bit more. It's the ego of that intelligence. He knows a little bit better than everybody else.
Yeah, I kind of saw him also as, like a Max Lord type as well.
Yeah.
And that was something I was like, oh, that's kind of neat that he would be, that character, that persona, but definitely also a Luther style to him. There was a lot going on with him, and it was funny because I don't really know Terry Sloan as Mr. Terrific. That's before I was really reading, and I still haven't really picked up a lot of issues with him as, I haven't picked up the Society from that period where it was him. So I still don't have a strong knowledge on what he was in the past. So again, going into this is my introduction to the character. This is the layout of who he is, and I'm kind of enjoying the fact that I don't have this past knowledge to deal with. The info I'm getting right now, and he is a great just villain / gray character, that you don't know exactly where he, what side of the fence he's going to land on. Especially, we had a glimpse of him in the present day, Earth 2, and
with Mr. Terrific.
Yeah, with Mr. Terrific. So we had that initial flash. Now we're getting that backstory behind him that I'm like, oh, okay, cool. This is, where are we going with this? And I want to see this guy go up against my Mr. Terrific because I got money on Terry. Because I think he can, Terry Holt, as opposed to Sloan. Realize what I did as I said it.
See, I think Terry's going to win.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, any way you cut it. But one of the things I love is they bring in the anti-life equation, which we've seen used so many times. This has finally come to fruition. It's sweeping the world, and it's like a virus. And Sloan's idea is we've got to show these guys that we will do anything to stop them, including genocide. He knew that he had to keep the Trinity out of the way in order for this to work. And the darkness of that, like, how do you get to the point where you can commit that act, make that decision?
And I understand why it's in the story, and I agree with it being used as a story element because I thought it was a great story. But it's it's funny because as I sit here and I read and I personalize it and I rationalize it, I just want to smack the guy and say, dude, this ain't going to work. You're trying to intimidate somebody who's trying to destroy you. And let me intimidate them by destroying myself. No, actually, you're doing what he wanted you to do anyways. You're just speeding along the process for him. And, it's one of the, I want to shake this guy because, he has nobody around him that he could bounce this idea off of. He can't say, hey, what do you think of this? And even if he had someone around him, he wouldn't listen to him because he knows better. And it's that ego, that classic character flaw that the super intelligent always have. They make great villains and they make these wonderful, antitheses to your heroes, but there are those little flaws where you just want to reach into the comic and smack them in the head and say, dummy, what are you thinking? This ain't going to work.
No, I think it did work in his mind because, and let me explain to you why. I don't think his deal was to intimidate. I think his deal was to be noticed as a genuine threat, as a genuine adversary, to be respected, and I don't think in the sense that you stopped me by doing this. It's if I'm willing to do this to my own people, what am I going to do to you? I don't think, I agree with you. He sped along the process, agree, because he committed genocide in there. And I think if you asked him, Terry Sloan would agree with you that he did that. But he did it to make a statement.
Yeah.
And the statement was more important than how much he was assisting in what Darkseid was doing. And so, I mean, I shouldn't say I'm not like disputing you in the sense that I'm definitely coming from an opposite point, but building off on another level. I think Terry Sloan knows exactly what you're saying. I don't think that he's naive. I think he knows those things, and I think he would agree with everything you're saying, and that he would feel that it's justified to somehow do that. I'm not saying I agree with him at all.
Yeah.
I agree with you that I would smack him upside the head as well, but I don't think any amount of smacking we could do, I don't think there's anything we could tell him that he didn't actually consider.
Probably.
That's the thing about him.
Yeah, definitely, probably. It's, again, you look at who he is and what he stands for, and just we said it before. This is his character flaw. This is his weakness. It's the same weakness Luther had, probably the same weakness Max Lord had. It's that I can't be wrong because I've thought of everything. It's that, confidence, arrogance, assuredness that he knows what he's done. He's like, I've looked at every possible outcome, every possible equation, every possible way this can go. This is the best answer because that's what I say. That's what I think. I have to be right. And even if you could lay out a 100% perfect logical argument, he still wouldn't see it. When we have our discussions, if you make a good point, I'll say, yeah, that's a good point. I make a good point, you'll say, no, you're wrong, Jim. But we get by. With him, he's not going to do that. He's not going to see that. He'll never accept defeat.
Well, in his case, he was looking at it as, if we let these people live, what we're going to saddle ourselves with. Because he even makes this point. And had we done the right thing, the humane thing, caring for these creatures, the handicap we would have given ourselves would have cost us everything. He was looking at this as getting rid of the liability. And I think showing them that we would do anything means that we would do anything to stop any form of weakness you could possibly bring upon us. And he looked at it as we're making ourselves stronger by getting rid of them. And I was agreeing with everything you were saying earlier. Yeah. But building upon it, I think this guy knew, he looked at every angle of it. I don't think this was a plan that he thought of on the fly. I think he really thought this through. Came to a moral justification that he knows a little bit more than everybody else, and really thought Batman would be, when he says to Batman, I thought you would be the one out of the three that might get it. He meant it.
Yeah. And, it's, again, when I was reading this, another great villain / hero / villain that popped in my head was Ozzy. Ozymandias. Again, another person who does this horrible thing under the notion that this is going to bring the world together. This will bring about peace. Yes, I am killing all of these, millions of people, but I'm saving all of these billions of people. So it's that great supervillain type of mindset.
Well, the thing is with him, and you got to remember with Terry's also traveled to other dimensions. So he's seen what potentially comes of this. Like in other scenarios where this has happened and what the world looks like because of it. He's seen that darkness. So he's coming with knowledge of possible ways this has played out, and that's affected him. Imagine going to another reality where your world's been destroyed, and in every one of those scenarios, it was because the Trinity, quote unquote, succeeded. Or, the Trinity was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And he's looking at, well, your right thing isn't good enough. We can't just do the right thing. We have to do the strong thing. We have to make the strong sacrifices. We have to make those choices that you aren't comfortable making. And that's the thing that, because we haven't really talked about that. He's the guy at the end of issue 1, when they see somebody zapping out, that's Terry Sloan, isn't it?
That's who I believed it was.
Okay, because now I'm convinced from this that this is exactly who that man was that was zapping out all over the place. So Terry's been doing that.
What we see, this was something that when they first said that Darkseid was going to be here, I think there was probably a little bit of outcry because people liked the fact that there was only one Darkseid, in the universe, in the past, generations, past existences. And this was seeing him jump around, seeing the other planets that got ravaged by Darkseid. I enjoyed the fact that there was multiple Darkseids.
How do we know there's multiple Darkseids?
Well, technically we don't know 100%. The same Darkseid could have been the Justice League as well as on Earth 2. That could be the same Darkseid. I'm right now assuming we have multiple Darkseids, but in fact, it may only be one Darkseid jumping. He may be able to jump between universe to universe as well.
And I should clarify too. I don't know that there isn't multiple Darkseids, but I'm not convinced. I mean, when you deal with characters who are like gods, now I think we do see different variations of the gods for Wonder Woman, and in this JSA Earth 2 world, than the gods that we're seeing obviously in Wonder Woman's series written by Azzarello.
Yeah.
So that adds, possibly an agreement to what you're saying, that maybe there is more than one god depending on the universe that you're in. Darks being the new gods for Darkseid and all that. I don't know. I wouldn't be mad either way, but I kind of like there's an interesting part of me that would like the idea of what if it is the same Darkseid, and what if the first crossover between Earth 2 and the JLA is those teams teaming up to fight Darkseid.
Oh, definitely. That the notion of the crossover, the notion of JLA, JSA, team up that is something I'm really excited to see, especially because this universe lost their Superman. This universe lost their Batman and Wonder Woman, fighting Darkseid, and our universe, they survived. It's, there's so many anticipations for me on this. And one of the things I was wondering is, what if there was a Darkseid team up? Can you imagine two Darkseids teaming up?
Yeah, no. I think where I'm thinking differently than you are, the classic JSA, JLA team-ups, where they fought alongside the new gods against Darkseid, there was only one Darkseid.
Okay.
So that may be, but I guess what I'm saying, too, being fair and honest, that doesn't mean those same rules apply. So that's why I'm open to your presentation as well, because all bets are off with the New 52. And that's where I think, as fans, with the way they've handled the New 52, we can have that past history, because all that stuff that I'm talking about happened pre-Flashpoint. And maybe that stuff does apply here. But if it doesn't, it puts us on a very same common ground that neither of us know who's right on this. And it could be something that's some hybrid of what you and I are talking about. It could be, there's all kinds of different possibilities with that. But I love that when you have discussions, I think, with people about the New 52 now, we're all on the same ground floor trying to figure out what the past history is of these characters. I'm enjoying this about Zero Month. I'm liking to find out the little tidbits. I like that I find out that certain elements of what I've loved about characters are still present. And in some ways, they're reimagined in a way that adds a new wrinkle or tells me something new about the character that maybe I never knew before. And that's something that I think is connecting all of us through Zero Month. I have been, as a fan of Zero Month, reading all of these issues along the way, so incredibly satisfied this month with finding the backstories of the classic characters that I'm really latched onto, and some of these newer characters who I didn't really follow as much in my reading of DC growing up, and that I'm really getting to enjoy. We'll talk about things like Animal Man and Swamp Thing and stuff like that, where I think their Zero issues were just as rich and valid for me as reading this. And that's something that I'm really enjoying about this month, is a year later from this, and I think this is the time to do it, we're starting to get a little bit of the continuity fleshed out. Which is, I'm a continuity fan. I like that history. Now I'm starting to feel that history coming back into the DC universe with Zero Month. It's giving me those things that I think have been missing from my reading experience. Not that, I've been digging the last year like crazy, but it's kind of like the puzzle piece that is now rounding this whole experience out, giving me these little bits and pieces and tidbits were really, really needed at this point.
Now, when Sloan's talking about the team and he's breaking down who the 8th people are, the 8 wonders, the one that goes unnamed, that he says, for those of you who know about the war and know about this Earth, you'll understand why they're not being mentioned yet. Well, I don't know the war. I don't know the Earth, so I don't know who he's talking about. Who's your theory?
I don't know. I really, really don't know. And I deliberately didn't look online just because I figured we'd have this discussion. I'd love to hear what your theories were on it. I was thinking it through, and I could not think of anybody. It's one of the things about this world. We don't know who all the players are that are around. And I think that's where they've done a great job. Like, I took it as, obviously, some of the players he was putting into play with those Eighth Wonders. He's counting Supergirl in this, right?
He's counting Supergirl, Catwoman, and Huntress.
Right.
Within the 8. Now, when I start thinking about the old Justice League, I start thinking the original JSA, the one name that we haven't seen any sign of yet, and I'm wondering if that could be the person. What about Dr. Fate? Because I always thought he was a original JSA member.
Wait. So who's the one you're thinking is missing?
Yeah.
The one I'll refrain from mentioning now, for reasons for all this world would understand. I don't know. Dr. Fate.
The only thing that holds me back from saying that is during what we saw in issue 1, when they actually show the war, when they show them fighting,
right,
we didn't see any sign of him there. So you'd think with someone with that much power, he'd be in the fight.
Right. But it sounds like there's a reason he wouldn't be.
Right.
I don't know. I want to know. I didn't have a theory on that, which is interesting. And it is funny because this world's history is a blank slate. That's something I like that I don't know. If that makes sense. I kind of like that I'm really, really curious about it, like you're mentioning. I'm glad you went there, because I'm curious about it too. But I'm more, and I don't know if you're in this place, I'm more content to just enjoy finding out. That wasn't a throwaway.
Oh,
this
God,
is going to be a major reveal at some point.
Yeah.
So when?
My guess is when we start getting the Earth 2 JSA or whatever they're going to call themselves team together. That's when they're going to make their appearance. Or in the fight between the Mr. Terrifics, maybe that's when they're going to make their appearance. And that'll be the introduction or the reintroduction to the character. So it's definitely wasn't a throwaway. There's going to be somebody coming into play here. Now, back in the original existences, with Mr. Terrific, was there anybody that he was partnered up with? Was there anybody that it was his right hand?
You're talking about in the original JSA?
Yeah, the original JSA.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't remember that being the case. See, a lot of my exposure to the JSA growing up was in the team-ups, the crossovers, and then an All-Star Squadron. Like, I read that series, and I loved it. That was a long time ago. I don't remember Mr. Terrific being teamed up with anybody. Boy. And there's probably, somebody, if there was somebody, people are, like, probably throwing their iPods against the wall. Last time I read All-Star Squadron was when it was coming out.
Okay.
So it's one of those series that I have all the issues. I've wanted to sit down and go back and reread them. I've paged through some of them, but I'm not gonna pretend that I've memorized all that continuity. I don't remember there being anything, because with that and Infinity Inc. and the series that came after, like Infinity Inc. was like the successors, so to speak, of the JSA, and that's where you saw people like Jade and Obsidian and.
Right.
And that's where those characters started making appearances. And the character that would become Atom Smasher, that's where those characters started making their appearances and things in that book. I don't remember anybody being linked to Mr. Terrific. That doesn't mean I'm right, though. So, I don't know. I would love to know if there was a character like that. I'm going to look after we're done recording. But I don't know.
Now, what's your feelings on Batman with a gun? Him using the blaster in the fighting of the parademons?
I think it's a Batman who's lost what he did and is recognizing that in this particular case, you're fighting for your world. I think this is Batman who's become a soldier. And I think it's a little different than pulling that out and shooting. I don't think this is a Batman that would pull that gun out and shoot it in Gotham.
Right.
I think he would do it in this case because the situation calls for it. Because of look what he's dealing with the parademons. And I think when you're shooting at parademons and you're Batman, it's a lot different than shooting at a superstitious criminal. I don't know. I mean, that was my take on it. So did I have any issue with it? No. Because you look at what he's going up against. And I don't think these creatures, he considers them to be. I think there's no remorse over blasting them. They're not human. They're not life in his eyes like we know it. That's how I don't know. Did you take it that way? That's my speculation.
Complete agreement with you. I'm co-signing everything you're saying there, because it's Batman dealing with these extreme situations, especially after losing Selina, after the fact that his daughter's in the middle of these fights. His daughter's now in a direct line of fire, so Batman's going to take it up a notch. Batman's going to do stuff that he wouldn't have. He's going to fire the gun. He's going to blast things. He's going to be a little bit extreme, but when he's back, on street level, when he's dealing with the thugs and the punks, then he's throwing the batarangs, then he's throwing punches and kicks and whatnot. He's not going to pull out this blaster and start, blasting a car thief. That would be crossing the line. That would be not Batman. This right here is Batman using the gadgets and the inventions that are required for the circumstances.
Our Batman, without having the loss that this one did. I mean, our Batman has tremendous loss too, but you know what I mean. Our current continuity Batman, if he pulled out a gun and was using this type of weapon, like a blaster weapon like this against parademons, I wouldn't take it as being out of character for our Batman. I would expect to see some internal dialogue from him as far as, I'm using a gun. I hate using guns, but the situation calls for it, and I would love to see some dialogue where we see him justifying that this is not the same thing. But I wouldn't have an issue with using it in that case, because I think there is a distinction between what he's shooting at. I do.
Well, we've seen him use the tranquilizer rifles and the rubber bullets and that just for the massive crowd control. So we have seen him pull out the gun and use it. It's not a blaster. It didn't kill. But again, he was dealing with the street level, regular, everyday humans. Here he's dealing with the parademons, so he's going to blast away.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I had no issue with it. I thought it totally made sense considering the circumstance. But I didn't think it was an out of character for Batman. So that was something that I really dug. I really thought it was kind of cool that Terry Sloan was considering Selina, Catwoman, part of the whole group. It just shows how long Bruce and Selina had been together. Just how I would love to. I'm with you. That's why I want to see how did their relationship get to the point where she was kind of accepted as part of the gang.
Definitely, it's as we get more of the pieces of the puzzle, it does open up more questions, and it's a sign of good writing. It's a sign of just well placed bit of information here, bit of information there. They're not leaving us hanging. We're learning about the characters and we're getting great stories in the process, but it is just that building of the character and it's that curiosity of them. And it's not just because it's Batman. Not just because it's Superman. It is because of this world, this universe that they've crafted has me wanting to know more. And it's a sign of just, it's a sign of talented writing and creative teams that you can tell have a story to tell. And I just imagine in the back of in the back of their head, they've already crafted these stories as they're writing their current continuity. They got to know what the past was to forge ahead with the future and the present. So I just wish one day they'll be able to take those stories that they have there and put them down and share them with us.
Yeah, it would be interesting for me to know how much of the history of this world has been outlined. And how much of it is something that they haven't had a chance to do. Because it really is a new Earth 2. I would be curious to see how much of it mirrors what we've known about Earth 2 in the past. Although, the Earth 2 in the past, these guys, that Earth 2, had these guys teaming up with the JSA. So, that obviously didn't happen. For obvious reasons.
A lot of people went boom.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah, this artwork of the fight between Wonder Woman and Superman, I always like seeing these two throw down, especially because how evenly matched they are power levels, and it's it's a cool moment. It's those cool geek moments. Who would win in the fight? And here you got just the mentally controlled and or distraught and or tweaked Superman who's throwing down with Wonder Woman who can't hold back, who's got to keep going because he's out for blood. He's out for death here. He's beyond what he normally would do. So she's fighting for her life. And while that's going on, Batman's trying to stop Sloane. And it was just some really cool ending to the issue, especially because you do get to see just the nastiness that is Terry Sloane. But again, as we said before, in his mind, he's completely justified what he's doing. This is the right thing for his Earth.
You know, you mentioned the artwork, and I loved the artwork all the way through, but I really loved in that last panel where you see Terry, that if you look carefully, you see all of the scars from that glass in his face, in his hand. You know, this is a guy who is still recovering from all that, and I know something I just really... I dig the attention to detail with that map behind showing just the areas that he burned up to make his point. Or not even just to make his point, to keep them from becoming weaker due to those areas being taken over. So I guess, does that mean that the anti-life equation has been stopped then, right?
I think for now, I'm assuming that was the anti-life generator that they blew up, but it wasn't even just blowing up the anti-life generator. It was blowing up the Rapture device that was destroyed, these large chunks of the world. And
the people.
Yeah, and the people. And it's neat because in issue 1 or issue 2, they talk about these dead zones. They talk about these areas from the war. And I always, when I was reading it the first time, you were assuming that it was Apocalypse. It was Darkseid who did this. Well, not really. It was one of the quote-unquote good guys who did it.
And in his mind, he would say he did it for the benefit of everybody.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the benefit of everybody, but then also his idea of the benefit for everybody. That's always a tricky line. Because people make the assumption, when you're in that kind of leadership position, you make the assumption they're doing things for the betterment of everybody, but without asking everybody, it's not like everyone voted on it and said, "Hey, yeah, blow them up." And would people be able to do that? It would be curious to see how a group of people would react to something like this. I would like to believe in the morality of humanity that people would not okay what he's doing. And I do believe that. I think that, once people are faced with, but yeah, he's going to kill all these people. I think people would scream for some other option to that. I can't imagine people being okay with any form of genocide. Especially with the fact that you would think that over in those places, there's a ton of people that also have family members that would be wiped out because of this.
And his argument about, basically trimming the weak, and just, not having... us having to deal with them, deal with the survivors and the people left over. My argument always to that is when we are faced with that adversity, when we are tested as human beings, tested our human character, that creates strength. Not just, the weaknesses of depleting our resources. You look at every time there's these natural disasters throughout the world and people rally behind it and they send over aid, they send over support. You get some just strong personal moments from people where you're like, hey, I got to help out. I got to do that little bit extra. Somebody who wouldn't have gotten involved in the matter will say, you know what? I see those people over there dying. Let me help out here. Maybe, maybe it's with money. Maybe it's with volunteer. Maybe it's with, doing stuff that they never thought they would do. Take in, somebody who needs a home. Take in somebody that they've never met before but who needs their helping hand. You see these character moments of people. So, yeah, you got one side, saying, he trimmed the herd, survival of the fittest. But on the other hand, he's taking away those heroic moments. He's taking away mankind's chance to stand up and say, no, we will rise up against this. We will face, the darkness together.
We'll find a better way.
Yeah.
And I think that is, to me, the strength of humanity. I think it is, the people that will say, sure, the easy way to do this would be to wipe them out, but as a people, and I think we find strength when we do that, when we take a harder route to help others, to save others, to try and protect others. It's a tricky situation when you're dealing with things like the anti-life equation. Because here's the question. If that's spreading, it's kind of like that contagion thing, If you're spreading that and it could hit everybody, at what point in time do you say it's okay to commit an act like this for quarantine purposes? I don't know.
Yeah.
I would be a terrible leader that way because I don't know that I could make that call. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, definitely.
One way or the other, because I think if you do what Terry Sloan did, you risk the wrath of others and also the person. See, for me, I would feel guilt forever over the fact that those people died. And what if we could have done something different? But then there's that other part. If you don't do it, you're stuck then as more people are taken by this rapture of the end-of-life equation. Should I have stopped this from happening? Would those people now still be coherent and with us? I don't know. That you're really in a moral conundrum.
Yeah, big time. Because, it's, as you started mentioning, I started thinking about the 28 days later, 28 weeks, that whole zombie story that, originally it was contained in England. And they, in sections of it, they're trying to just, keep the virus from spreading. And eventually by the end of it, they're ready just to, okay, let's do a complete wipe of this country. Let's completely wipe out everything and anything that could be a possible contagion and just, to save the rest of the world. And it's that kind of moments that, he's dealing with. Now, I still hold on to the fact that there's got to be another way. But it's a tough call, and it's one of those reasons why I'm glad I'm a nobody in life, and I'm not somebody with that kind of responsibility or that type of the person who has to make the tough call. I'm glad I'm not that guy.
See, to me, I could never make that call on my own. I could do it with a committee, where you could sit around a table, point counterpoint, but I'd have to feel like that committee was really representative of the diverse backgrounds of humanity, from all over the place. People who are going to really think outside the box. Also diverse intellectual backgrounds, from all different walks of life, all different employment, all different. I mean, because I would think you would need a broad spectrum of that. People who are going to think of things that you would never in a million years, that can throw them out around the table while you're having a debate about that. Of course, if you need a decision to be made quick, it's not going to be made quick that way, and that's where I think it would be a real danger, because sometimes you need a leader who's willing to make those tough calls, right or wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. I would not be that person. I don't know that is a sign of weakness as much as just admitting to myself that I have certain strengths and certain career paths that I should be in. Being in politics and those type of decisions is clearly not one of them. Because I would not be able to handle that.
Yeah, definitely. It's I don't think it's any weakness of character, just who we are. We know you got to know who you are, and first and foremost, and that's why we do what we do.
Yeah. Vote for me. I won't make the tough choices.
We've had presidents like that.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
To the Batmobile. Let's go.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
You're ready to move up.
Hey, Sean and Jim. This is Dave Hooray from the Facebook group. I just wanted to call and talk about some general impressions of Zero Month, and also one area of the Zero Month and the DCU in general that I've really been getting into. Before I did that, I did want to do a shout-out for the other listeners at one of your sponsors, DCB Service. I've heard Jim and Sean both talk about them pretty much every podcast. I never used them before. But one of the problems I've been having, that a lot of us readers have, is, the more you read, the more you want to read. You read one title, there'll be a crossover, you want to pick that up. And my pull list is just getting, horribly out of control, and I'm getting, 10, 12 books a week, and I was going to have to start cutting some out, but I tried your sponsor, and not only have I been able to keep everything I read, but I'm being able to add a couple of titles, and even upgrading to the weekly shipping. My overall bill is still probably a third or more less than it used to be, with more titles and weekly shipping. So definitely the DCB service is cool. If any of the listeners haven't tried that before, I would say it's very cool. They ought to try it. Okay, so now to the point at hand, Zero Month. Okay. when I first heard the Zero Month, I think my initial impression was sort of like, I thought back to years ago when you watching the NBA Finals and they broke in with the OJ chase. It was interesting, but I'm like, okay, that's cool, but let's get back to the game. Having read the first 2 weeks of the Zero issues, I think my week 3 stuff should come in today, but having read the first 2 weeks, I got to say, totally changed my opinion on that. This Zero Month so far has been awesome, and I thank you guys for covering every issue. That's very cool. I think the thing that's been really cool for me about the Zero issues is, in a number of areas, things that I'd already been reading, it sort of fleshed out those characters and just made it even better. Just a couple examples, Swamp Thing. I've been reading that. I knew Anton Arcane was a bad guy. Sorry, getting a text. I knew Anton Arcane was a bad guy, but that Zero issue, oof, that scene with the baby, I'm not in spoiler territory there, but my goodness. Green Lantern Corps Zero. Green Lantern is definitely my favorite area of the DCU. Green Lantern is, to me, sort of what Batman is to you, Jim. So, like, anything Green Lantern I love, but among all the Earth Lanterns, I don't want to say I haven't liked Guy Gardner, but if I ever had to rank my Lanterns, he was always at the bottom. I just never really cared for him. The Zero issue Green Lantern Corps absolutely changed that. I mean, talk about fleshing out Guy Gardner. That was an amazing issue. Other guys, Phantom Stranger, I'm totally hooked on that one. I'm going to see where that goes. So, just loving the Zeros. Now, one thing you guys had mentioned last week, you asked, are there any Zero issues we'd read that were making us want to read other titles? And I've definitely got that. And one that I've been reading for a while and enjoying up to this point was Suicide Squad. Now, admittedly, I've never read a lot of pre-New 52 stuff, specifically not Amanda Waller or Suicide Squad. And I know they've changed Amanda Waller a lot now that I've gone back and read some of the older stuff, but I really like the new direction they're taking her. And this week I actually read Suicide Squad and Team 7, the Zero issues back-to-back. And I'm definitely going to be reading those two continually, and I'm probably going to add a couple others to that. I think the Suicide Squad Zero issue, and even Team 7 to some degree, showing you the early stuff with Amanda Waller, really fleshes her out and almost totally changes the way you approach Suicide Squad. Those two books back-to-back are going to be amazing. And, looking at those, even though they're only in the Team 7 issue for a little bit, they're going to be more often but Grifter and Deathstroke. So now I'm thinking, well, I'm digging Suicide Squad, Team 7. Maybe I want to read Grifter and Deathstroke as well to sort of round out that whole corner of the DCU. I just overall love what they're doing with the Amanda Waller character. And, aside from Suicide Squad and Team 7, she showed up in Justice League at the end of the Villain's Journey arc, sort of taking Graves into Belle Reve Prison. She showed up in the Green Lantern Zero issue about with Baz. So they're sort of keeping Amanda Waller where she's just really sort of she has fingers all over the DCU. And I don't know, her and Suicide Squad and Team 7, I think that whole corner of the DCU is really getting interesting. I can't wait to see where that goes. So anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for letting me ramble. And as always, guys, love the podcast. Thanks, man. Bye.
See, I like this kind of stuff. When I was wondering with the Zero issues, especially with the fact that you've been 12 issues in for a lot of these titles, would there be books that people were trying now because they were relaunched with characters and concepts that they have not read before? We were talking about that with Phantom Stranger, how that was a character that, you and I really, I mentioned throughout, I'd known him since I was a kid as a character, but I'd never read Phantom Stranger, not on this level. And, it was a great example of a character who I was really digging. One thing I want to, before we go into some of his comments, I got an email from one of our listeners, or a comment from one of our listeners. You know who he said the Phantom Stranger he thought he was? Judas. Because of the coins?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And that wasn't me who came up with that. It was one of our listeners who made mention of that. And I was like hitting myself against the head going, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, betraying.
Like 30 pieces of silver wrapped around his neck, yeah. And as soon as you said it, I'm smacking myself in the head going, duh, Jim. Probably right there. I think I'm willing to, I'll put my backing on that saying that's probably who it is.
And I'm sorry to throw that in here. It was just something that I'm like, when he was talking about what, how he'd mentioned what books are you being drawn to or what characters you're drawn to that you didn't read before. And it just kind of clicked on me. I'm like, the Phantom Stranger, somebody made a cool comment about that. I don't want to forget to mention that on this episode because I just thought it was really neat.
And to whoever said that, you get a...
And I'll give you a Kleenex to wipe it off. Thank you for shouting out our show sponsor, too. It's one of the things. I was a user of DCB Service before they became a show sponsor. So when we had the opportunity for them to become a show sponsor and they were kind enough to approach us for that purpose, it was nice because I was already using them for the reasons that he stated. And they're really nice people. I had the opportunity. I got to know them through Comic Geek Speak because they had been on there as guests talking about DCB Service, and then I had met them at conventions through Comic Geek Speak, and just got to know them as just Cameron in particular, just as really nice people, the way that you would get to know any local shop owner. So that to me is one of the things that I really like about using DCB Service. So I thought it was great to have somebody kind of do a testimonial for them that's finding a benefit to being able to read more because of great services like DCB Service. But I want to add that they're really just nice people, too.
Yeah, definitely really cool people. And I'm glad, they're around. Even if they weren't a sponsor, even if we weren't doing this show, we'd continue using them. This has really made this very affordable to me, and I want to keep getting more and more and more. And I do have my financial resources, my limitations, but I'm able to get the entire universe because of the discounts, because of the convenience behind it. So yeah, they're definitely very satisfied client here, very satisfied customer with those guys.
He was mentioning that Guy Gardner issue of Green Lantern Corps. And I know we're not really talking about that issue on this episode, but I know you and I have both read it, and I can't agree with him more about that issue and how great it was. Actually, let's just start talking about it? Just because he's kind of let us, it's a nice segue. Because I don't know how, I can't not talk about that issue, because how cool was that to see Guy's background with his family? Yeah,
and it's, as much as it's weird for me because part of me really hates the city of Baltimore. And the reason I hate it is because I have been a longtime Browns fan. And those of you who know American football know that, Cleveland Browns owner, up in the middle of the night, just pretty much abandoned the city, moved over to the NFL, moved their team over to Baltimore. And so there was this natural hatred for the city that I was just festering from football. And I can't hate the city as much anymore because this was a really good example of it's a pretty cool city. It's got its own little dynamics to it. The HBO show The Wire was another time when I'm like, I can't hate Baltimore as much now. Dang it, quit showing me there's good people there. And it's, that anger, kind of subsides a little bit. But I was glad to see that it wasn't New York, that it wasn't Chicago, that it wasn't the cities we've always seen. It's a different city. It's a different area. It's a different region. And there's going to be little tweaks. There's going to be little changes. There's going to be personalities. But it is definitely the cop family. It is that same mentality. And you see why and where Guy Gardner came from. And then I got to completely agree with him. Guy was never my favorite Lantern. I always thought he was a jerk, and I'm seeing a different side of him. I'm seeing more behind the bravado, more behind the character, more about who he is.
And the dad.
Yeah.
The relationship with the dad, he was never good enough. And, you're dealing with a brother and sister who had made it and really had been kind of, they went the path that dad did. And in many ways, I think dad was living vicariously through the brother and sister, and their successes, kind of reliving his own memories and doing the things that he still wanted to do. And Guy was, in many ways, maybe dad sees a lot of himself in Guy, but is afraid to admit it. He sees the potential in Guy. Because sometimes when you have the father and son, and I would assume the same thing for the mother and daughter, who rub each other that way, it's usually because there's a lot more in common than either of them would ever be willing to admit between the two of them. Usually the outsiders can see it more. And I really loved how into this story I got. I'm with you. Guy I always thought was a putz. And over the years, I think the great writing of Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps in particular has made me look and view that character as somebody who has evolved from that guy into somebody who's something more. This origin story, I think, is a great way to show that chip that he had on his shoulder that we've always seen, especially when he's dealing with Harold. I love that he was calling Hal Harold.
That, again, those some great moments of, and it's like, hey, good to see you, partner. Yeah, hey, no problem, Harold. It's Hal. Oh, okay, Harold.
And he knew, and that's just the way he is. And that was something I really liked about this. I felt like it's everything that we've always thought was charming about Guy, yet you still get that sense of why people wouldn't like him, why he would be the one that would rub people the wrong way. But then you see those moments of heroism, like when he hears the police call and he knows that it's his brother there, and he rushes to the scene, and the other police officer that he saw earlier helped sneak him in to the academy thing is dead. And he's got a chance to rescue and try to save his brother's life in that moment. And you see him risking himself. When he came in on that motorcycle, I just thought that was a beautiful moment. Again, this is all without ring slinging. This is seeing who this guy is. And that, to me, that's a great way to build the sense of a hero. It's what did they do before they got the ring? And when you see that with Guy, you see the duality of him. You have those moments where you want to smack him upside the head, and you have those moments where you're like, man, I wish I was that cool. And that is Guy. I do think that's who Guy is as a character. He infuriates you 90% of the time. But it's that 10% where he steps up that makes him that guy that you forgive, Like, he's that one you're constantly apologizing for, but you remember when he did that? That's why you give him a break. That's why you bend. That's why his brother and sister still stand up for him, because they know that side of him. But he doesn't show it outwardly that much. And that's where the character works for me. And they developed that very quickly in a Zero issue in a way that I thought was very satisfying, didn't feel rushed, but felt like they got a lot of content in. And I think they've done that a lot with these Zero issues. We talk about compressed timelines, and to me, if you're going to compress a timeline, you've got to try and capture in that compressed timeline at the core who the character is. And if you're taking out certain events that have happened in their history, how can you showcase the character in a way that still makes you believe the modern day Guy that we're seeing now, the newer version of the Guy that we're seeing now, has those same kind of quirks that you've always found identifiable about who the character is? How do you not alienate the older fans who've always liked this character, while at the same time making him fresh for the younger fans who've never read him before? That's the balance that I think has been achieved in a lot of these Zero issues. Green Lantern Corps, I thought, really hit a home run with this, because this feels like that same Guy Gardner in a very compressed way. And it worked. It just really worked. Because I read Guy back when he took over for Hal years and years ago, when, it was, you really wanted Hal to it's like, when is Hal finally going to knock this guy down? And you hated Guy. I did, at least, back in that era when he took over for Hal. And to see this now, it makes me just kind of, it adds the right level of balance to it. I just really enjoyed the issue.
Yeah, in seeing, the ability to overcome great fear, seeing the focus, seeing the concentration, seeing before he really had his formal training where he's able to fight off and he's able to hold down, and he steps up when he needs to take down the big bad. I'd loved seeing those moments. Again, you see why he becomes an honor guard, why he becomes respected among the Lanterns as being someone who can throw down. He's not just the putz. He is a Green Lantern. There is reasons why that ring chose him, and there's reasons why he's really good at what he does. And I loved seeing that. And it's, again, that whole this wasted potential or misspent potential that he had where he could have been a great cop. Well, we're now seeing the fact that his failings and his shortcomings that happened there forged who he is, forged his character that becomes this really powerful Green Lantern.
I like that when he finally got his Green Lantern symbol, he was wearing the classic Green Lantern outfit, but then he had the ability to customize his outfit, and it was a hybrid of how he was dressed, the biker jacket and stuff like that. It really just storyline-wise, at the end, there was a nice tie-in to this is who this guy is. And the customization really showcases where he's come from and how far he's gone. And I just thought that was cool. I really just found the character really identifiable and enjoyable. Yet at the same time, you know that this is a guy that is going to be punched by Batman.
I still want to see that scene too.
Yeah. I mean, that's whether or not that actually happens again. I mean, it's that feeling like this is a guy that Batman would be justified in punching, and I mean that's one of those cool things about the character. It's whether or not you actually see the scene or not, as you're mentioning, you feel like this is the guy that it would happen to. And that's great. It's great reading. I loved his interactions with Kilowog.
Yeah.
And Kilowog becomes one of those MVP characters when Kilowog shows respect to somebody, you can't help but believe that, on some level. I mean, because he is so hard-edged so many times with characters that when you see him soften up a little bit and give that nod, his nod means something. And that's another character who I think has been very well developed, and I'm glad that in this Zero issue they took an opportunity to show us a little bit of cool Kilowog as well.
Yeah. And definitely, Kilowog is that solid drill sergeant, that solid warrior. And when he's written correctly, I always get that feeling of, R. Lee Ermey, just that, just that drill sergeant that you every time you see those great classic war movies where you have the Marine Corps drill sergeant who's given the spiel, who's given the talk, and this guy does not back down, he does not hesitate, he's not slow down. Gunny Hardway, Clint Eastwood's character, all these great just classic Marines that I'm just like, oh yes, I always get that feeling from Kilowog. I always get that sense from him, and I love that the fact that this alien, and it doesn't seem far-fetched that this is how he would react. This is who he is, why he was selected for what he does. This is what fits the character, what fits the duties that he has.
Yeah, I agree. I liked seeing Guy in his early training, or in his early, I guess, apprenticeship, being the last man standing in a situation where it really requires the guy who is able to, no matter what life throws at you, no matter what adversity, whether it's you bring it on yourself or other outward situations do, you keep carrying on. You find that moment to man up. And that is Guy at his core. He's the guy that will man up in certain situations, and I thought that was just another great showcase of the character as well. I like seeing him with the longer hair too in the earlier issues. The idea is that his look changed as he became more confident, became more of a member of the Corps. That's when we got to see him with a little bit of a shorter haircut, closer to Jim's regulation haircut. Yeah. So I don't know. I thought it was just a really, really good issue. And it made me feel a stronger connection to a character that I've been enjoying since they've been really working him through the Green Lantern Corps book.
Hey, Sean and Jim, this is Jamie Dunst. Able to call back now after getting over, trying to get over pneumonia, which appears what I had. Anyway, I wanted to talk about Nightwing number 0. I thought it was a great origin story of Dick Grayson. A little different than what we all know and remember, but oddly enough, not so much that it felt too jarring or anything like that, of that nature. The catalyst for Dick Grayson becoming Batman's partner is still the same, and I liked the little, personal moments where you see Dick with his parents and giving his mom the bracelet with the robins on it, I thought was really nice. One thing I noticed that I'm not sure Dick ever really had this ability, but there's a part in the book where Bruce Wayne's saying that Dick has a gift for reading motion and body language, which I thought was something more that Cassandra Cain had, but maybe Dick Grayson had it too, but not to the ability maybe he has in this new 52. But I found that very interesting, and I thought that was kind of cool. I liked the new Robin costume that he made out of spare Bat costume parts. I wonder if that was the Robin costume he wore the entire time, or if he had changed it up. I liked the part with Lady Shiva, although it felt a bit forced. But I understand why it was in there, because this is going to lead into the next story arc where Dick Grayson fights Lady Shiva, and I liked the conversation that they had. So it seems like maybe Lady Shiva is going to try to persuade Dick Grayson to train with her and become maybe an assassin, which is obviously with the whole Court of Owls isn't anything new to him. I thought overall the issue was really cool, but having read this and then having skimmed Red Hood and the Outlaws, I'm kind of wondering how long each sidekick had been Robin for. Like, how many, was it a year that Dick Grayson was Robin? Was it less? And I'm wondering about the other Robins as well. How long were they actually Robin? I know that they're trying to fit all this continuity in this new 52, and I think overall they're doing a pretty good job. I really like the different Robin costumes that each person's worn, and I'm looking forward to the confrontation between Nightwing and Lady Shiva. I think it's going to be pretty interesting, and I wonder how Dick will fare compared to his first meeting with her as Robin. Love the show as always, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
See, I guess I'm looking at the whole Robin thing a little differently, because I'm thinking about the fact that these guys live together. So if you go on to like Real Time, and the fact that they're going out and doing this every night, or close to, like, even if you're going out like 4 nights a week, that's a lot of adventure. Yeah. You know what I mean? If you go in a year, let's say Dick Grayson was Robin for a year. I think he was longer, but let's say he was Robin for a year, because we go, what is it, a 5-year timeline? Or is that what we're working off of?
Yeah, we got a 5-year window
with 3 Robins.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, and a little of Damian, right? Because
Damian's the very end of the 5 years,
right? So, you know, we could say that Dick Grayson, what, a year and a half for Dick Grayson, a year for Jason, maybe, because I would say Jason was probably the shortest, and another year and a half for. See, you could realistically give, you know, really you could do a little, almost 2 years for Dick Grayson, almost 2 years for Tim, a year for Jason, and then a few months for Damian, right?
Yeah, I was actually thinking less time even for Jason.
Right. I'm just trying to kind of fit in.
Yeah. It's, you know, definitely. I was thinking a couple, 2 years, 2.5 years for Dick Grayson, and then just a couple months, really, more or less, of Jason Todd, and then in came. There was a period where there was no Robin, and then in came Tim. Yeah.
And Jason was obviously cut short during his run there, so right. I don't know. It's starting to work more for me when you start thinking about how much they're patrolling and how much they could really get done in that amount of time. And a year of doing that together, even just a year, I'm talking about even just a year, is a lot of time together doing that. Because you figure you're going to go through some really intense scenarios with that happening. So taking it as more than 12 issues would happen during that time, a worth of content. So there's ways to make that seem like it's been more than it was. I really loved Nightwing 0 because I love that it brought in the stuff that Kyle Higgins has been introducing in there with Raymond and the circus and all that. That was something that was a part of Dick's past, and how there's this sense of, at that age, one of them would be more responsible than the other. One would be a little bit more aloof, and Dick would see the big picture of, hey, you almost killed this guy. You know, and not that Raymond was trying to do it, but that Dick was a lot more globally aware of what he was doing. And that made me connect with him, too, because seeing him as a kid, Dick, to me, he's always been, we've talked about it on the show before, Dick's the big brother. He's the guy that you want to be. You wish that you were as cool and had the swagger of Dick Grayson. In those moments, I wish I was that kid. I wish I could say I was the kid that wouldn't run away. You know what I mean? Like, and go, oh, man, what did I just do? Let me keep running. Dick's the guy that looks at running's not enough. I need to fix this. I'll need to take, and even if that means that I get in trouble, I'm taking responsibility for what I've done. And the kid that's getting scolded in there, the reason why the parents are handling him the way that he is because he is that kid they can talk to. Yeah. That way and feel like he's listening to them and a lesson will be learned there. And you see the relationship between him and his parents in that moment. See, I think you learn more about a kid and his parents in a moment of distress like that than you do in the happy times. Because you get to see a moment where these two parents, you know, they're scolding him, they're being the good parents that they are, but they've also clearly throughout the years have had a sense of you're grounded, you're disciplined, and we're going to explain to you why. And you need to learn from this experience to become something more, to become something better, because you're really a good kid. And that's because we as parents put that time in and help make you this good kid. These are really tried and true parents. Like, I liked his parents a lot in this. Yeah. And we don't see much of them before they go bye-bye. But I thought that was great writing because I got to know in a very short stretch a lot about Dick Grayson's parents and how they handle a situation. And when you're going to pull at the heartstrings of a reader and make them feel more for Dick Grayson and what he goes through, I've seen this event happen so many different variations to Dick Grayson over the years because his origin's been told over and over and over and over again. This one hit me. And a lot of the best ones have. This one hit me. They told it in a way that it hit me. I loved seeing them in the Nightwing style costume. Thought that was cool too. You know, the classic Nightwing with the flared collar and all that kind of stuff too. Nice little nod as well. I'm sorry, go ahead. I know you got some things you probably want to add to all this.
Well, it's one of the things about just, again, it's another issue that when you read it, you want to know more about the time. You want to know more about the character, more about the parents. Just, I want to see a mini-series of Haley Circus that occurred before anything happened, just Dick Grayson as a kid, him growing up. Little side stories like this where you see the nod where the the idea for the Nightwing costumes came from, ideas, with the Robins, ideas of everything that is, Dick Grayson's going to be his future. I want to see the nods. I want to see where the seeds were planted. And again, you get a great story. You get a lot of fun read. You get oh, that's some cool stuff. You get some tragedy. You get some tug at the heartstrings. You get just this overall just great adventure, knowing that it's the lead-in, knowing this is the ground floor. This is the backstory you didn't know about. Well, guess what? Now you see why he's such a great guy now. Why he's such a great hero now is because of the solid foundation he came from. He came from a loving home. He came from, strong parents. Who knows where his life would be had, no one died, had, it just gone through the way the normal life should have gone.
He's totally right that this is something that was a lot more indicative of Cassandra Cain, because that was one of the things I always liked about Cassandra Cain was her ability to be able to, especially before Cassandra Cain was even talking, was her ability to be able to read people. I do think this fits the concept of Dick Grayson, though. You got a guy who's an acrobat who, does these amazing acts where you have to be able to rely on and read other people on the fly in split seconds, knowing when they're ready for you to grab them, when they're ready to grab you, because you can't afford to make that mistake. You grow up in that type of environment where you're paying attention to those tiny details because it's a matter of life or death, because you're doing these death-defying stunts. And that would be something that I think you would start noticing little tiny details in other people. And it is a new twist. He's right. It's never been taken to this level with Dick Grayson before. But it was funny how I felt that this was something for his character and the background of him, it really worked. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I said one of the things I'm liking about these Zero issues are they're staying at the core to who I think these characters are, but in the way that they're telling the story, very similar to what I was really digging about these Jeff Johns Secret Origin minis that he was doing. They're adding a new twist and a wrinkle. The Lady Shiva thing in this was a really cool twist or wrinkle that was thrown in, and that actually ties a lot more into Tim Drake's origin, which I know you read in those Robin miniseries, where Shiva was a part of the Tim Drake training. Remember that back when?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So now we're kind of seeing Shiva take this more active role with Dick Grayson, and we're going to see him having this kind of confrontation with Lady Shiva. I wonder what that's going to be like between those two when they meet. I'm excited to see it because it is a new story, a new wrinkle, a new twist, and obviously it's going to play out differently because it's not Tim Drake now, it's Dick Grayson. And I really like that. I'm excited for that story to happen because it's been told in this origin, similar to what they've done with those Secret Origin things in the past, and I like that.
Oh, definitely. And you start looking at, it was funny, one of the comments you're making about just, when we start seeing like the Lady Shiva connection, we start seeing these things, and it's that we're seeing the present story, what's going to be a present story that ties to the past, the connections and the changes. And I'm definitely, it's exciting for the past. I want to see the more of the past stories, but it is just getting you excited and amped up for the next story that's going to come out. The future stuff that's going to come down the line for Nightwing, for Dick Grayson, seeing where his character goes. Because again, I have a stronger connection to him. I know who he is now, or I have a better understanding to him. And I like the fact about the recognizing the body mechanics, and just the body motion for all those points you were making. Because I'm sitting here, I'm just nodding my head going, yes, exactly. He is a very physical presence oriented type of character. And his fighting style is the acrobatic style, is the 360 presence, 360 knowledge of everything going around him, because that's what he grew up in. That's the environment. That's his style and just the core of who he is.
I think over the years with Dick Grayson, I always looked at him as a true ally to Batman that brought something unique and different to the table. And I think when Tim Drake was brought in the picture, there was always this idea that, Tim Drake was the brainy computer guy, and he surpassed Dick Grayson in that level. And first of all, I don't want anything to diminish or take away from Tim Drake, because I love the character of Tim Drake. But I felt like sometimes they were diminishing the intelligence and detective skills of Dick Grayson. And I love how this origin reestablishes that, because as a kid growing up, I really looked at him as the one that helped Batman solve crimes too. And we're bringing back elements that I think have always been at the core of Dick Grayson. And I think you can have this guy. And to me, it adds more strength that Dick Grayson and Tim Drake would find a lot in common between the two of them. I love that he's playing computer games and he's actually searching for his parents' murders. And Bruce knows. He sees the signs as well. It's different. He doesn't see the twitching and all that other stuff. He sees the signs of, I've been there. I know what he's thinking. And I want to stop him from going down that path. But it's funny how in those moments, Dick Grayson, in his own way, is more well-rounded, I think, because of the longer time with his parents, maybe working with them in a different way. They let him kind of grow and be himself. I'm not saying that Bruce's parents failed him. I just think, they were two different kids in two different environments. I think Dick just has this opportunity to see becoming Robin as a different kind of growth for him, taking this tragedy that motivated him to become this guy. And he grew beyond his pain into a hero. Like, Dick Grayson's a superhero. I mean, he's not Dick Grayson's a superhero. He is a consummate, good guy. And that's the guy you want to be, Dick Grayson. I mean, if you're looking at the various heroes of the DC universe, the one guy that I think you just want to be is Dick Grayson. I think that's at the core who the character is. You look up to him and you admire him. And Bruce is the one where you're just kind of like, it would be scary to be him. Dick Grayson, you're like, Dick's life's pretty good. He has dates. You see Dick, you always think Dick Grayson's going to be all right.
Yeah.
And then he's the guy I think you just want to be. And this story really captures that. And I love that there's that turmoil from him at, should I be able to let this go? This pain. Or should I be more like Bruce? Why am I not more like Bruce with what he's going through? And I like that Alfred finds some comfort that he's not. It's a great story.
You got to think about just, the torment, because Bruce was a lot younger when his parents died.
Right.
So you have that level of maturity and you have that type of dealings. But also, Dick Grayson, I would say, had a much better relationship with his parents than Bruce did. And it's not knocking the Waynes. No. It's the fact that the lifestyle that Dick Grayson lived with his parents. There was a more camaraderie. There was a more equal partnership. There was a more level of respect where it wasn't just, this is my kid. This is, our fellow, performer. This is another member of the Flying Graysons. This is one of us. And it's not, instead of, this is my child, who one day will grow up to do some great stuff. They already are looking at Dick as if he was doing great stuff. And he's been doing that for years with his parents. So he had a better connection. He had a more comfortable, just level with his folks. And I was glad to see that you do get that feeling of who Grayson is, and you do get that feeling of the family. And I was echoing some of the sentiments just when you're talking about the deductive skills of Dick Grayson. I was glad to see signs of that in here, because I always saw him as more of the physical, the acrobat, the style, the profile, the superhero. But I didn't see him really as a great detective. I was glad to see that there is, some baseline for the detective, for the what makes Batman so cool. You see that in his prodigy.
I loved seeing the new Robin costume, because I'm a traditionalist, and especially when it comes to the Bat family. But I gotta say, I really, the second I saw that, I was like, wow. And that says a lot. There was no skepticism on it. There was no, I looked at it, I was like, that is cool. I think it had enough of what worked with Jason Todd's version that they'd shown in various, year one storytelling, what they had going on with Tim Drake's version, a nice nod to Dick Grayson's version, and a little bit of a modern flair. But I was with you. I love that it was put together from scraps of Batman's parts, because that wouldn't be something that Batman would have had him putting together, because Bruce was really trying to make sure that he trained him completely before there was even any chance of any of this happening. And you could argue maybe Bruce was in denial as far as whether or not he would actually ever put him out there doing any of that. But I loved that whole I liked that Alfred was a little wary that, should this kid be being brought into this, because it is a crazy world and Alfred should be the rational one there. But those moments when Dick Grayson and Alfred are talking, leading into the costume and all that, just to me, all of that felt just very natural, very real between the two. It felt different than it feels between Bruce and Alfred. And it established a sense of comfort for me that at its core, once again, the relationship elements between these characters are in the place that they should be for me as a fan. Things are compressed. They're told a little bit quicker in the way they're being presented, but at its core, it's my comfort level of who I think these guys are. And that's where it's making me feel like there's a continuity here that is one that's welcoming to me as the longtime reader. And I think that's what's really, really important. You've got to find a balance in there that it's accessible yet welcoming to the older fan. And I think they found a great balance in this issue of all of those elements.
Yes.
Because this made me smile. And I really enjoyed this issue immensely. Great Bruce moments, great Alfred moments, great Dick Grayson moments. I loved his parents. Shiva's appearance was cool. I'm with him. The Shiva thing was kind of a very rushed thing at the end. And I'm going to go with him because he was kind of giving that a break as well. And I give it a break too because, in all honesty, I wouldn't have wanted them to spend more time on that Shiva stuff because what they needed to develop is what they focused on in this issue. That I looked at the Shiva thing as a tease more than it being like a really heavy plot development there. And I thought it did, as a tease, I thought it did a good job. It was very quick. It was very bam. It was like, bwahaha cliffhanger at the end. Yeah. And it was right where it should be. It shouldn't have been a bigger element of this story because it would have taken away from every other page of this book that needed to be there.
Yeah, it's the setup for the future. And that's what it was. And it was, I think it was just the exact, length and what it needed to be.
This has been this Nightwing series. This is the 13th issue of this Nightwing series. Every single one of them. There has not been a bad issue of this Nightwing series. It's been all great. It's a really, really good series. For anyone who wonders why, there's been like diehard Nightwing fans over the years that, really have certain runs that they consider their favorites and kind of who Dick Grayson is and why that character is important. This issue and these 13 issues of this series, I think, really have captured what makes Dick Grayson one of the cooler characters in the DC universe.
Amen.
Hi, Sean and Jim. It's Jack. Just calling to let you guys know that I've read Action Comics Zero. It was awesome. I read Detective and Batman Zero, and I was actually curious as to how in the world they're going to cram all of Bruce's 25-year history into all these open issues throughout the month and how they're going to pin that all down. Thanks very much, you guys, for a great show. I downloaded it on my PlayStation Network, and I listen to it just every chance I get of the show again. Thanks, guys. Bye.
I actually think it's really cool that he's using his game console to get our show. Because that's something that's really great nowadays with the internet connectivity of the game consoles, the portable ones and, the set-top television ones, that nowadays you can get podcasts and you can play them. I will play podcasts and my favorite talk radio shows and stuff like that in the background a lot of times when I'm playing games because, it's kind of fun, especially if you're playing like open world games. You can use that as like a background soundtrack, and it's really great sometimes to be enjoying that kind of, because especially comic book podcasts, you're hearing like a lot of this kick butt dialogue from your favorite books and people having this hoorah moments and it gets you kind of charged up when you're, I got the new Spider-Man game, the Amazing Spider-Man game. It just came out for the PC. It was the one based on the movie. And I was listening to podcasts while, swinging around the city of Spidey. I mean, there's something like appropriate from that, and I do it a lot of times with DC Universe Online too. I'll have a podcast playing in the background and it's kind of fun to actually be running around as a superhero and playing those games. Batman's continuity. The trick is, and I think that's a character where the New 52, they had to really say, there's essential core storylines that have happened. There's other stuff that in that history that he's mentioning, that long history, is not stories that happened. So there's ancillary stuff that because the storyline is compressed, you're going to say, well, this event happened and this one didn't. And if that event happened, it might have been more compressed than what you were used to. Obviously, things like Hush happened, I guess, on some level, but the relationship between Selina and Bruce in Hush didn't happen the way at least we're used to it happening. Where she knows his identity, which was something that was pretty well established at that point, that she knew the identity. So there's certain things like that have had twists and turns, but then there's issues that happen along the way where these storylines just did not happen at all. I'm guessing things like Cataclysm and stuff like that didn't happen. Because in No Man's Land, I'm guessing those storylines, didn't happen, although I might find that I'm wrong there, and it happened in a more compressed fashion. I don't know. But to answer his question, we know Killing Joke happened because of what happened with, Batgirl and stuff like that is in continuity. But, it doesn't mean that every other story and every other one-shot and every other miniseries happened. It's just select ones.
Yeah, we haven't seen Bane yet. We don't know what happened with Bane. So there's, those just unknown factors there. And I was thinking about Long Halloween because that story is played out over 12 months. So either it was a compressed version of the story or it didn't occur. I don't know. There's a lot of different stuff that makes you wonder what happened, what didn't happen, and some of the story arcs, you think about it, they could tell 12 issues in a single night, depending on how tight the story is told, how action-packed the adventure's going on. So you could have some major story arcs, some major adventures that spread out over a year that actually only occurred in a couple days.
Yeah. And I think that's the key too. It's and it would happen only in a couple of days because the storyline allowed for that.
Yeah.
Now, here's the question: as far as we didn't see Bane, I'm guessing though with the stuff that we were seeing going on in like stories like The Dark Knight, where you're seeing jacked up Two-Face and stuff like that, that Bane is a part of this world.
Yeah. I'm assuming there is Venom, there is Bane, there is all that existence going on because they mention Venom by name.
Right.
So if you got Venom, then you're going to have Bane, in all honesty. But again, I don't know how far the breaking of the bat went. Did we have as-bats? Did we have that whole everything that happened there? Or was there a variation on it? And how long was Bruce out of commission, if at all?
Yeah. Did Batman's back get broken?
Yeah.
And what did that look like? I don't know. That's all stuff that I would be glad to find out along the way. And that's something that I'm really kind of enjoying about this. I don't need everything spelled out. I like Zero Month because we found some of our answers, but not all of them.
Yeah.
And I want to find out more along the way as it makes sense in the storytelling. So, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at about Batman.
How you doing, guys? This is Brandon calling out in New Orleans. Just wanted to chat a little bit about Zero Month. I'm actually sitting here looking at my stack now. I'm finished with the third week. I'm looking at 21 books in front of me. I guess every month I usually read about 12. I'm a huge DC fan. I keep up with pretty much everything in the Lantern family, most of the Bat titles except Detective I dropped off of and Dark Knight. And I just got to say, man, it's some good books that came out. Out of the books that weren't available before, I picked up Phantom Stranger and Team 7, and I really, really dug Phantom Stranger. Didn't think I was going to like it going into it, but the mystical aspect, it was awesome. It kind of felt like an old school book, something I would have read when I was a kid, actually. I really dug it. I tried Wonder Woman. I haven't read that before. Really, really good book. Batwoman, not too bad. It was kind of wordy for me, but the book itself was pretty good. It was just very, very wordy. Swamp Thing, wicked title. It looks like I've never tried it. I love Scott Snyder's work on Batman. It's my favorite title in the DC universe. So I guess I couldn't believe I wasn't on Swamp Thing before, but I went ahead and I gave it a try at Zero, and man, I think I might actually try and pick that one up. It looks really interesting. That's actually, out of the DC, the New 52, that's the thing I like the most is the family books, the way they've intertwined the families. I know some people complain that the universe feels incohesive because there's not as much intertwining titles. I guess people, from Batman going over to Superman, I've seen a little of it, but they focus more on the family. I like that. I guess just because that's the way I keep up with the books. I tend to stick to 2 or 3 families, and that's the way I like to read them. So I guess that's why I prefer that. But Detective Comics #0 blew me away. Like I said, I gave up on the book a while back. At issue #7 actually, because it just really lost interest in me. But this title is just amazing. The Bruce getting trained, that stuff, I eat it up. I mean, any Batman fan digs that. That's the bread and butter of Batman. How he became the man he is today. Why he's always prepared. The way he's emotionally detached, yet still. You can tell he still cares, especially now with Damian in the picture. and being a father, it was a good title. I dug them all. Batman and Robin Zero might actually be my favorite fun title of all of them, because, come on, Robin on his birthday for every year, who is my father, battling the mother, crazy scenarios, jumping out of planes. It was that was a fun title. So I think I've rambled on long enough. I'll hear what you guys have to say after this. I love the show, huge fan, been listening for about a year and a half now, and keep it up. Love what you guys have to say.
Yeah, we're talking Batman and Robin #0. But before because I've been chomping at the bit to talk about that one. It was actually technically supposed to be our next 0 month episode, but we're going to that because he just got me excited for it, which I was already excited for it. But I liked his comments about these family groupings that they're doing with the titles, because I think, to me, that's building a tighter continuity. When you've got like books like Animal Man and Swamp Thing and Frankenstein and stuff like that, and the Justice League Dark, they're part of that family of books, and you can see these books starting to interact in certain ways that make sense when supernatural things happen, that they would obviously wind up on similar cases, and their events would kind of bleed over into each other, and one would have an effect on the other in a way that makes sense. But it's also for people on a budget. If I'm digging the Swamp Thing supernatural thing, it would make sense that I would also dig Animal Man. And as a fan, I can, on a budget, read that family, and I feel like I'm getting a pretty cohesive, tight universe of my own, a little pocket universe there. But then when these books do cross over into some big, larger event, you feel like you really know those characters and how they already interact with each other. Like it would make sense, like if Swamp Thing and Animal Man are in an event together, that the two of them would buddy up almost instantly, because we know that they've established a history with these two characters in the course of a year. That these are characters who have gradually come to an understanding through their events with Anton Arcane, that type of stuff. So, I think that's really important in how they're approaching the New 52. And then the events that are with Titans and Superboy, I'm liking that world being crafted there. And yet that Superboy has a really cool interaction with the Superman universe, with the clone thing. So that's going on, which I can't wait to talk about his 0 issue for just all the cool things that were laid out there. So, and that plays into Supergirl and plays into Superman as well. So they're doing a great job. I agree with them with the families. I think there's a lot being offered there for fans of certain character groups and how they're being put together. That's my take. Do you like that, the way they're grouping them? Is that working for you, or do you prefer something with a larger feel to it? I think sometimes when it's larger, there's characters that just kind of seem forced into a continuity.
I'm loving these this breakdowns, and it's when I look at like titles like Swamp Thing and Animal Man, if I had just been sitting there and not been doing the podcast, not reading, I don't know if I would have given those the shot, just because my traditional viewpoint always was, just like a couple Superman titles, a couple Bat titles. That would be how I would approach things. I wouldn't have given titles like, Swamp Thing and Animal Man a chance. But when you start picking up the one, you see the other, you see the connectability. Same thing, Justice League Dark and Vampire. Those are two titles that kind of go well together. That they have those common grounds that. You read it and you're getting a better understanding for this universe. You're getting a better feel for these characters and these type of characters. Talked earlier about like Team 7, Grifter, Deathstroke. I call them the espionage style. With Suicide Squad as well. That espionage stories being told in the DC universe. I like that we have these little niches inside this universe. It's, again, one, a realistic style. Two, it does give you that family, that feel, that environment of more bang for your buck when you're getting this larger parts of the universe. And there is a level of realism that there wouldn't be just this one type of character. This character should interact with this one, and this one should interact there. You should see these reactions. You should see these team-ups. You should see these groupings. It's something that I'm really, really enjoying from the 52. It's the DC universe. It's not DC Comics. It's the universe, and I need to have that universal feel, and I'm getting that solid.
Talking about Batman and Robin #0, I really kind of want to go here with this one because we see Damian sitting there, and this is that book again. I'm a broken record when I say this. I know you rant and rave about this book all the time. I adore this book. It's one of those books. He was talking about how the Scott Snyder book is his favorite. I agree with him. That's my favorite. But this book, I think because of this, I naturally underrate this book. I'm at the point right now where when I read an issue like this, I'm kind of like, I'm having a lot of trouble determining which one is my favorite book out of those two, because this issue I thought was an absolute home run. When you got Damian sitting there and fighting man-bats and, going back to that cool stuff that Morrison was doing during the initial part of his run, and you see him in that incubator with that look on his face. Boy, that Patrick Gleason, the whole art team actually got to be applauded with that. That look on his face, I mean, that's Bruce's kid. That look in those eyes, that's Bruce's kid. He's been through that, that pain and everything, and I love that he looks in that moment. I'm like, okay, I see Daddy. Whose eyes has he got? Mommy's or Daddy's? He's got Daddy's eyes.
Yeah, this was. I tell you, it's funny because I never wanted to say that I like Damian more than Tim because Tim's my Robin. Well, the universe kind of is giving me an out here. Because with Tim being a Red Robin and Damian being a Robin, I can now say I have a favorite Red Robin. I have a favorite Robin. All right, I'm covered. Because the more they talk about Damian, the more I read about this wonderful, absolutely fabulous little monster. This character is just like, yes, this has been just that great. It was this introduction that hits you, on all cylinders going, ooh, the child of Bruce Wayne raised by the League of Shadows. Raised to be this killing machine. Oh, that's going to be good. And the more pieces to the puzzle, the more stuff we're revealing. We're seeing, yes, this has been a really good idea. This has been a really well-executed story. This is a great character who has a very strong longevity in this universe. And I'm excited to see where he goes, what happens with him. And again, I want to see more of this kid's upbringing. The stories, the horror stories that he could tell, that they could just do a one-shot, you think you've had a bad day? Well, let me tell you about my 5th birthday. Let me tell you about my 8th birthday. Let me tell you about the first time I went to the zoo. There could just be so many just great stories that could come out of Damian that they could pull out of nowhere. And it's that vast resources of this character, and such a young, brand new character to have this depth already has been just kudos to creation of him.
A day in the life of Damian Wayne. I would love to see him go to the zoo. What a great character that he's been. I agree with you. Very richly developed. He's constantly interesting. I think at first he was a character I didn't like him. I wanted to punch him. And, I'm like, oof, what a really unlikable Robin he was. And I think, he's got that, I don't want to say he's got that Guy Gardner factor. I was almost where I was going to go with this. But because it was much quicker with Damian. You start to see this character with these walls up. And then you see the vulnerability of, I want to know who my dad is. I want acceptance from my dad. I want my dad to understand me when he doesn't seem to. And how can you not connect with that? Because these are things that people genuinely feel. They want approval. They want to feel like their parent cares about them and sees them in that capacity. I don't know, the stuff that I just really have eaten up with this character. Those moments, who's my father, mama? I mean, wow. I have always been a Talia fan. I've always loved Ra's al Ghul. I've loved that whole storyline. I've always loved Talia with her beloved. And, there was that part of me that always wanted to see Talia wind up with Bruce, too, as much as I wanted to see him wind up with Catwoman. But, boy, does she play well as a certain kind of crazy. And I really like that about her, that she's just a little off. The way she's training her son, the way she pushes him, the way she manipulates him. What mother does that to him every birthday?
Yeah, that just, I'd get, my mom used to torment us, and I say torment in a loving way, that she'd always sing, today's your birthday. birthday, hooray, hooray. And even as adults, I'll get a call at like 2, 3 in the morning. And I'll answer and it'll be Mom on the other end. Today's your birthday. Hooray, hooray. Well, you know what? I kind of like that song now from Mom compared to other parental options. I couldn't imagine seeing her come after me with like a samurai sword trying to kill me on my birthday. It's, there's a little bit of a craziness in there. And it's, I love just getting that. And again, it's more understanding why Damien's a little bit off kilter.
Now how does that song go again?
Today's your birthday, hooray, hooray.
And what time does your mom call you about with that?
Usually early morning.
Like say 2 to 3 in the morning. I'm like, maybe I'll call it 4. Maybe I'll call it 4.
Do that,
maybe I'll call it 4. Today's your birthday.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I was the kid who I'm the last of the line, and Mom was like in labor for like 12 hours. And I was born like a couple minutes after midnight, so Mom was up late with me. So I think she's trying to just, it's like she's like payback's time now. It's you're gonna make up for a little bit of the pain I caused, in my birth. So I think there may be a little bit of vindictiveness coming out of Mom on that one.
I love sitting here seeing Damien go into that infinity hope chest that Talia has with a Batman cowl and putting it on. There's those moments where I'm just kind of like, how can you not find this kid endearing? Even with all the kookiness of the character, when you see those moments, I'm just like, this is where I think Damien has been such a success. You took this kid that was a brat, and you gradually showed us, well, that's only scratching the surface of who he is. It is proof that with any human being, that you can't take them at face value. And I think there's a cool message with Damien. And I find him an interesting character because of it, the more that he's been developed. I just think he is one of the richer characters that have been introduced in recent times. And that's where, I love my tried and true favorite characters. There's a lot of characters that haven't been introduced yet in the New 52 and may not be. Who knows? I don't know what the plans are. What writers are going to use what characters as we go down the road. And there's characters that I genuinely miss that aren't a part of the mythos. But you take a character like Damien, who was introduced shortly before this relaunch and now is being, again, fleshed out in issues like this. This is where I'm going to say this. Every single one of these issues that have spotlighted a Robin have shown the difference and distinction between each one of them, shown some commonalities between them and their relationship with Bruce and what looking up to him has meant to each one of them in their own unique way. I have found this. He talked about the families of books. As a Batman fan, such a geek out time to be a Batman fan. I love that if somebody says to me Batman and Robin's their favorite book, and I'm sitting there saying the Snyder book's my favorite one, you don't feel like arguing over it because they're all great. You know what I mean? We're winning as fans by having this kind of quality being delivered to us. This kid is just great. It reminds me as a kid of that's what I wanted as my Halloween costume. I had that plastic one that, like, if you sat too close to a heater, it would melt. Yeah. I had a Batman costume. It was one of those with the, the mask that, crinkled and everything like that. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Can you imagine having that kind of Colin running around and playing Batman?
Oh, God, that'd be perfect.
I'd probably be locked up. But, what great stuff. And to see him year after year, the drive he had to know who his father was, how he kept pushing himself harder and harder and putting himself into scenario after scenario to just prove to his mom that he was worthy of finally knowing who his dad was, so then she could send him in to be a source of turmoil for his dad.
Yeah.
And I love that was the whole justification. But to use her kid to accomplish that goal, ooh, it took a character in Talia who I always found endearing as well and made me really resent her as a parent and how she would use her child and not put forth nurturing him and making him into a better... We talked before about how great Dick Grayson's parents were. This is how not to parent.
Yeah, this is definitely the the opposite of good parenting there. And it's another understanding of what she's currently doing to Damian, what she's currently doing to Bruce with putting the multi-million-dollar contract on her own son. You understand where she's coming from, and you see the stuff she did as a child and the purpose behind the kid and just everything that played out. Okay, it makes sense that she's doing this, because I'm completely on board with. I thought it was a cool story before, but now I'm even closer and tighter with the story, because we see just all along what her motivation, all along what her style and planning for Damian and Bruce have been. It completely fits.
Now, those bodies that are under the water, what are those? Who are they? You know, when Damian's in the sub,
yeah,
and looking out, who are those guys? Because were they tortured by Talia? What happened?
I was thinking either enemies of, tortured by Talia, just the misfortunate, the unlucky lotto winners who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Oh, you know who they are? They're some of the ones that look at Damian's training sequence. Are these the people that were around with Damian's training? Because if you look underwater, aren't those the same ones that were earlier on a part of Damian's development? They are. They're the ones that helped raise Damian and teach him.
Look.
The double page where she's saying, "Happy birthday, Damian, you lose." If you see him during those sequences, the one's his music teacher. And the other one's the scientist, teaching him, science and all that. These are all of his teachers that I think are, helping train and hone him. And then they're being killed after they've, outlived their usefulness, I guess?
Well, you think about it, you can't have any of the witnesses, you can't have anybody who would know what Damian knows.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you can't learn, anybody who's going to go after Damian can't learn and can't know exactly his level of knowledge. It's the eliminating the possibility of further weakness to the kid.
Now, Damian didn't kill them, right?
No, that was pure Talia.
Okay.
I'm assuming Damian didn't kill him. You never know.
A mad music lesson gone wrong, and I win, mother. I want to learn rock and roll, not this violin stuff. I don't know. Because, his world's a little bit of a creepy one. But imagine looking out. Here's the thing. I'm agreeing with you. I think it's Talia, too. But him looking out the window and seeing that, and the comfort level of looking out and seeing that, what does that do to a child of that age? Mentally. That is your world, and you're not reacting to that in a way that's freaking you out.
Yeah, it shows just the coldness and just the upbringing of who Damian is. Again, it's more rationale to why when you first introduce him, he's really just this stiff who is just this obnoxious little so-and-so that you want to smack around a little bit. We're seeing just, where you and I grew up with family portraits on the wall and, just happy images on the TV. Damian grew up with looking out and seeing the rotting body of his former music teacher or his former science teacher. That nice Mr. Smith who, helped, show him the world of science, the wonderful world of science is now dead. His body rotting outside my window. That's just normal for Damian. And again, adds to the level of just that he's touched in the head a bit.
There's a part of me that wonders if Damian didn't murder those instructors, though. Because, his capacity for, he was being taught and trained to kill. And very comfortably. I mean, he's slashing at people left and right. Mm-hmm. I mean, to the point where the assassins that were right around Damian, he ties them up in their own parachute and they go flying down. I mean, he's stabbing people in the eye and stuff like that. So I don't know that Damian didn't kill his instructors as he was going along.
And you know what? If someone were to, I won't even argue that point, because it could be the point of, I know everything you can teach me. There's nothing I can further learn from you. Ugh, you're done. Yeah, it's the same thing with his fighting his mother and having to best his mother to get knowledge. Once he knows everything that you know, once you're no longer of use to him, he eliminates you and he takes you out. So I would be completely comfortable with that explanation as well.
Father, I imagined you taller. And he takes us right back into the intro to Morrison's run, which I thought was a great ending to this issue. You know, just kind of showing us that, a lot of what you've seen with Damian Wayne in his introduction and the Morrison run is pretty much so canon with the character. And I like this glimpse into his past and just how much mentally his mother worked him. It does make me a little bit more sympathetic to him when it comes to what happened with him in characters like Nobody. Where that's something where normally I wouldn't feel like sympathy for a character like that. It would be more scolding of a character like that. But when I take a look at what his mother put him through, you can see how mentally he would feel that this is justified in the way that he would handle himself and handle a situation, that it is a permanent solution and he needed to take these steps and Dad just needs to understand him in those moments. It was, I don't know, I really connected with the character. I'm not saying I justify it, don't get me wrong there, because I'm not justifying it, but I do think it helps me to understand him more and the challenges that Bruce needs to go through in order to try and recondition him to a new way of thinking.
Yeah, this issue really just came out and it was like Damian saying, please allow me to introduce myself. This was sympathy for the Damian, sympathy for the devil. And there was definitely that, those moments again where really, really has pulled in as one of, if not my favorite of the Bat titles, is the Batman and Robin, just because of this wonderful character. And again, just beautiful artwork. And it's something that really didn't talk about earlier, but it is just some breathtaking stuff. And I loved the moments when you're seeing like the reflection within Damian's eyes, and you're seeing just like his mother, in the reflection in the eyes, and a lot of the usage of shadows, a lot of usage of the bat type imagery as this kid's growing up. This was, again, great story that has me excited and anticipating even more wonderful Damian stuff down the line.
I want to mention real quick a friend of ours, Daryl Taylor, on Comic Book Roadshow. They do an interview with James Tynion, who had recently done a lot of the backups, and he's also going to be the writer on the Zero issue of Talent, not the Zero issue of Talent, the whole series of Talent. I've really enjoyed his backup stories, like the various ones that he's been doing in the Bat books. I think it's been a great introduction to him and his whole ideology of writing Batman, and they've got a great interview up with him. So you have a chance, check that out, and I'll have links to it in the show notes, so make sure to check that one out.
Holy caffeine!
Once again, sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, be sure to check out this week. I'm sure they're going to be posting right after October 1st kicks in all of the amazing new deals that you can get over at DCBService.com. So I want to thank them for continuing to sponsor our show. That's one of my favorite times of the month because it's a great opportunity for me to make strategies on not just what I'm going to collect in monthly titles, but also collected editions and sometimes those special release volumes. I'll make decisions based on some of the amazing discounts that they offer, something that I wasn't going to get before that they're offering a crazy pre-order deal on. I end up grabbing because that's my chance to get it. And over at InStockTrades.com, you want to check out the Absolute Green Lantern Sinestro Corps War hardcover. That's a $99 volume, 50% off, only $49.99, 368 pages. It's a spectacular story with amazing art. Make sure to pick up this volume from InStockTrades.com. I also want to shout out our show voicemail line. We used a lot of voicemails on this episode. We have more to get to. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. And we love having you part of our show. I think it's great to have that kind of interaction on the episode. And our preferred method of putting listener content on the show is voicemails because we're an audio medium. It's great to have your voice on the show and your tone and where you're coming from on there. So thank you for everyone that's called in, and we will definitely be airing every voicemail that we've gotten. So please continue to call. We'd love to have you a part of these ongoing discussions about Zero Month. I do want to remind everyone about our Facebook group. We're on Google+. We're on Twitter. Our Facebook group is incredibly active, and I just want to thank everyone for continuing to post there. To me, it's what's great is there's a community there that's kind of taken on a life of its own, and I really appreciate all the people that take the initiative and do that, from fellow podcasters to listeners to just longtime friends of the show that are just having great conversations there. I love that I pop in and there's just like really cool content going on there. Please always consider on our Facebook page and Google+, Twitter, all those places, if there's something that you need to shout out, remember that we love doing that. We have a website, ragingbullets.com, where I update every week what's going on the show. I also link that to those websites as well, Facebook and Google+. So if you've got a podcast out there, a blog or something like that you'd like me to shout out, please do that. I know there's a lot of you out there that have been promoting us. A lot of times that's the way I find out that we've got friends out there who've got new podcasts, and it gives me a chance to check you out as well. So please let me know. I'd love to link to anything that you're doing. Feel free to shoot me an email at ragingbullets@gmail.com. And I would love to make sure to shout you out. Jim, for our next episode, we have something special. I don't want to say anything yet because, as with any of these things, sometimes scheduling doesn't work out. But we have potential for a special interview on the show, somebody who has not been on the show before. Please take a look at the show website and Twitter and Facebook group and stuff like that. And after that episode's recorded, we'll let you know what that's going to be. But we have a really cool potential opportunity for our next episode. On that note, we will see everyone next week.
Bye.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and loss and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see, Hawkman, your plan, and what you do to me, Hawkman. The villains are closing in, be they Thanon Guard or Egyptian, working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier